Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I'm H.A. Conrad, along here with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Shout out to our intrepid sound person, Bill Wadman, who's helping us with some technical difficulties today, or me, rather. Anyway.
Well, howdy, hey. Hi there, H.A. Conrad.
Hi. I'm definitely feeling better since last weekend, so voice has recovered a little bit. Got through the Halloween festivities. And here to chat about the next few episodes of Zom 100 Bucket List, and I don't know, we'll get into it, but I have some thoughts.
Yep, thoughts are happening. We did another 3 episodes, and we got 4 left.
Yep. But before we get into that, we do have a couple of little news tidbits, and there has been we as everybody knows, there's been a little bit of a dearth of sort of movies and things that have been announced for coming out, in part because of the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers.
I mean, there's so many reasons by this point. It's like the collapse of the streaming model. Yeah, the Writers Guild strike, the SAG-AFTRA strike, the UAW strike, although that probably has less to do with it.
You never know. But in any case, we were really psyched to see that there's a couple of new announcements, in addition to the ones we talked about last week. So there is a new film that's set in Western Australia, starring Daisy Ridley, who some of everybody may know from
everybody may know.
I think most people know who she is, don't you think?
I mean, at this point, other than people who are really have a strong hatred of Star Wars.
Yeah. So anyway, Daisy Ridley's in this, and this is a Zach Hildish film, and called We Bury the Dead, and it looks pretty good. The stills look great. The premise is that she's searching. There's an incident or incidents, and she sort of joins this body recovery operation to find her husband, and zombies ensue. But I'm excited to see this. I didn't see a release date for this. Did you, Stuart?
No, and I also didn't see stills, which I am curious to see.
Oh, there were stills up on the Instas. But anyway, or maybe it was just the whatever, the artwork for it. But anyway, it looks cool. It looks like an interesting thing. Yeah, because it hasn't even sent into production, so these must have just been the artwork for it. But I don't know how long it will be, because it's February 2024 is when they're apparently going to start filming, which probably is in line with some of the things with the Screen Actors Guild and things like that happening.
I'm curious where this photo of her holding a rifle next to a river is from.
Right. So I thought that was part of it, but maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But maybe that was just how she got the job. I don't know. She looks good. She looks like she could do it. Anyway, looking forward to seeing that whenever it comes out. And then you saw there was another announcement, another zomedy, and that's by Buffalo 8, the production studio or the distribution company. Yep. And that's actually coming out pretty soon, right?
It may already be, in theaters November 10th, which is the next week, and then VOD, I think, almost immediately afterward. This is a cast of people who I should know but don't. I've seen a lot of these shows. Mike Castle, who's been in Curb Your Enthusiasm, Oliver Cooper from Project X, I don't know that, Taylor Blackwell from Resident Alien, which is an amazing show, Danny Mondello from Side Talk, and of course Chris Parnell has at least a cameo as a news anchor. And it's set in LA in the 90s, and there's a trailer on YouTube. So if you just plug in As We Know It into YouTube, I'm sure you'll find the trailer. Pam Grier, who I think is dead, right? Didn't she die?
Pam Grier? I don't think she did. Did she die?
Did Pam Grier die or not die? This is the question.
She died.
I could have sworn she died last year.
You might be right.
I might be wrong.
I might be behind the times. Maybe
she's still alive.
I think I would have remembered that.
What the hell? Okay, I don't usually ascribe death to people, but when I do, I do it real bad.
Oh my
All right.
goodness. Okay, well, heart attack averted for me, but like
Pam Grier, still very much alive, also has a cameo, I think, as the guy's next door neighbor. But it's
mm,
about a guy with writer's block. A zombie apocalypse breaks out, and then at least his friend and his ex girlfriend come over to check on him. I think is kind of the setup for this plot, and then we'll find out what happens after that. From the trailer, the effects look earnest but not great, I
oh,
would
they don't
say.
look great. I mean, I think they're kind of leaning into the kitschiness of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, Chris Parnell, you don't bring him in for a serious project.
No.
So it's gonna be, I think it'll have some laughs and it'll have some young actors who might, we might see more of in the future. So it's probably worth a look as we know it, releasing in theaters on the 10th and then VOD shortly afterwards.
Right. And then you've been watching the show and I have not seen this yet. So did you want to spoil the heck out of this for people?
Yeah, here's our spoiler tag ahead of it. I'm going to talk a little bit about the Star Wars show Ahsoka. This is not like new news. I think these episodes aired in, I want to say September on Disney Plus. But the story Ahsoka, which I think is mostly like the brainchild of Dave Filoni, who was the creator and writer of a lot of the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. Um, it features, so here's where the spoilery stuff comes in. This is like some of the middle to late plot stuff and a reveal from later in the 6 episode season of the first season of Ahsoka. It deals with some witches of Dathomir, who although they're not on Dathomir when we encounter them. But if you've seen a lot of Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels, these witches, they're another force sensitive, like, I don't know, culture, I guess, in addition to Sith and Jedi, but they tend to be a little bit evil in their vibe,
Hmm.
partially because they kind of dabble in necromancy, or at least that they, not only do they fight with the force, some of them anyway, they also can raise the dead. And they've done this on Clone Wars. They've raised like ghosts or undead, um like reanimated corpses of their fallen sisters, and I think they're all women. Although there was some sort of subplot about them having Zabraks, like Darth Maul, be their fighting force. Either way, it gets really complicated, and there's like hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Clone Wars, and then another 100 or so of Star Wars Rebels. So there's so much lore here, but I think Dave Filoni really enjoys the story of these like necromancer night sisters from Dathomir. So in Ahsoka, we are introduced to three, I forget what they're called, like high sisters or grand matrons or something along these lines, like big time Dathomir witches, and they have hooked up with an exiled Imperial general or admiral named Thrawn, who is a well-known guy in the expanded universe of Star Wars. He was first introduced, I think, in the novels of the expanded universe way back in the day, and then was fleshed out by Dave Filoni in Star Wars Rebels. And so the Thrawn is hooked up with some Dathomiri sisters. He's kind of in exile. He doesn't have access to the Empire. The Empire has actually fallen in the main plot. But he had like a few battalions or whatever of stormtroopers and a Star Destroyer with him. And in hooking up with these Dathomiri sisters in one of the final 1 or 2 episodes of the season, we find out that he's also been maintaining his fighting forces by having them reanimated by the
Mm.
Night Sisters. So there's actually a fight scene that with a really cool reveal, and it's not really scary, I think, because they try to keep the rating fairly benign for the Star Wars stuff. They want, like, I think PG-13 is about as hardcore as they ever want to go. But like a stormtrooper's helmet gets broken, and underneath are like snapping jaws, and they also have a scene of a bunch of Jedi like wiping out a squadron or so of stormtroopers, and then a minute later they get back up and start fighting
Uh-uh.
again. So it's not like exactly the Star Wars zombie stuff that I want. The first novel I read about this was called Red Harvest, and it's set in the pre-Republic days when it was like the Sith Empire. And then the next one is called Death Troopers, and I think that one has Han Solo and Chewbacca in it. So there is like a good literature based zombie history in Star Wars, and then also in the cartoons, and now Ahsoka live action with the Dathomiri zombies. But I just think I think it's cool, and I hope that they do something else with it. And I think that you should read Red Harvest at the very least, HA. This is like the Dathomiri version of that. It's still cool. It's still like there's some zombie stuff going on, but these are way more of the occult version,
Mm.
whereas the Sith novels are more of the it'll like disease version that I think you and I are a little more partial to.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I feel like you and I, there were some hints that they were going to do this. There was even like I feel like it was a quick still of the stormtrooper helmet or something like that. Or there was something that
yeah,
implied
there,
they were going to do this. So
there
I,
was a helmet in another show. Was it The Mandalorian that had some scratches on the helmet?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
we
that's what I'm
talked
thinking.
about
Yep,
that, but that I don't think it was related, but it might have been a clue. Yeah.
maybe. But anyway, I will have to check it out. But it sounds pretty cool. So I'm gonna have to do that. I guess I have some things to catch up on in the Star Wars universe. But
Ahsoka, I mean, there are always haters for Star Wars because it has a super toxic fan base, but I think Ahsoka was a really good show. So but the problem is that if you haven't watched Rebels, they're
you're gonna be really confused, yeah.
not rare, not really. They try to make it entry level, but there's a lot of backstory, and they're like talking about characters who aren't there. So you kind of need,
Um,
in a way, you
one
need some of that
one thing
background.
about the Star Wars universe that I always find fascinating is that like all the characters have names, even if you don't ever hear those names. So there's like so you got to do a little bit of legwork sometimes to be up to speed, but
Yeah.
all good. I will check that out. And last but not least, kind of a silly but also like questionable piece of news. There was like this poem commemorating this swim across Lake Kane in Florida, where people were all dressed up in zombie makeup and things like that. I guess it was like a zombie swim. But I have so many questions. Like they did this at night, I guess. Is this real? Is this like a joke? Because it seems like a really bad idea to be swimming across water in the dark in Florida for so many reasons, but also mainly because of, gators.
I mean, maybe when they say it's a lake, it's not a big lake. Lake Kane, Florida. Where is
Even
that?
so, even so, I I don't think it matters about the size of the lake. They even found a gator in Disney World, right?
Oh,
Um,
there are. Here's the thing, Conrad. If you Google which lakes in Florida don't have gators, there's four. There are
right.
four lakes, and one of them is even called Lake Placid, which makes me laugh because,
That is really funny. That is hilarious, actually.
yeah. So Lake
Um,
Kane is in Orlando, I think, and it's more. It looks man-made to me if you look at it on the maps.
all right. Well, let's hope that it seemed to have gone well since we didn't hear anything about gators attacking a zombie swim. But um, I
Frankly,
definitely would not do this. So that's just what I would say.
yeah, like there was a really small pond on the golf course where I worked in Florida for several years. It was called Gator Lake, and it did have gators in it, but people did get eaten while I lived there because they fell out of their boat and then were never seen again.
So this was a 1K swim at Lake Kane, which is north of Universal Orlando Resort, and it is a man-made lake. It is a 1K open water night swim, and they have a prime like one person who is quote unquote a zombie, and the swimmers are like have like a little buoy that has a light in a cord, and if the cord is pulled the light goes out and they then become zombies. This all sounds really terrifying to me, but apparently it is for a good cause and all of it went to charity. And it was to raise money for swim lessons for an aquatic center for people who couldn't afford the swim lessons. um so that's that. I definitely still wouldn't participate. but but
Oh,
I guess I feel a little bit better about the fact that there are no gators in that lake.
I guess we can feel better about that.
All right. So now Now on to our main event, which we are talking about the next three episodes of Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead. And we're talking about episodes 4 through 6. Um, I have to say at the
Yeah.
outset, I enjoyed the first part of this series more, and maybe this is kind of the weird middle and it'll get better, but I don't know how you felt, Stuart. And look,
I'll
I should
tell you
have
how I felt, Conrad.
how'd you feel? How'd you feel?
Yeah, I felt like the sixth episode was kind of eventually got to a place where I was interested again. But I will frankly admit that I think between episode one and episode six, and that which includes two of the episodes we talked about last time, there's just not a lot here to latch onto in terms of story. And
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of
it's very
retreading the same ideas and themes, and like it's not moving it forward.
yeah.
Um, and just as a heads up for anybody who isn't aware, there's some, I mean, like misogyny in anime is pretty rampant. This is, I would say, mild, and like the sexual sort of themes that they throw in here, and the sort of not even sort of, just the it's misogynistic,
Well,
and
yeah, we got
using women as props, and like as
yeah.
this as just not really humans. I think that sometimes they justify it because in this case they have this like hero woman who is, the kind of the pixie dream girl zombie killer in this, but that doesn't really excuse how they treat the other characters. So flagging it for people who may not really want to get into that stuff, but uh I should have remembered it. I just didn't. And but
Another
besides
thing I'm
that,
just realizing is they never went back to Showtime. Like, why even introduce that? But I don't know. But yeah, sorry, you're right. It is complete. Yeah, and this first episode that we have, the flight attendant of the dead, which right away I feel like probably telegraphs what they're about to do,
yep.
and
Um,
the discussion that he and Kensho are having about how he can't get a girlfriend, but he wants to wine and dine. A flight attendant is on his list of things to do.
right. As a, a conquest, and it seems a little, I don't know. It seems a little flip, a little shallow.
It's
Um,
it's super shallow, and this episode includes a lot of the production or the elements of the story that I don't enjoy, which are all these like, and maybe this is just an anime thing, and maybe I'm not a big enough anime fan to appreciate it, but he's just losing his mind internally constantly, and I find this kind of like it's not a great mechanism for the story. Like, okay, yeah, he's got inner thoughts, but all of this, like, oh, I'm bleeding out of his eyes when
oh,
Kensho
I
says
know. Well,
something, or
I mean, that's an
I
anime thing
I
generally.
know, but like it takes up a lot more time than I think it needs to.
It
And
does.
if they had just kind of gotten through this, like this first episode, it's 20 something minutes, and really they just get a TV out of it and nothing else. Like this does not
Yeah.
drive forward any element of the story or any
And
relationship.
And that's kind of the thing. The other thing that I will say is that I was unsuccessful in finding a translation of his list. I
Oh,
don't know if you were successful, Stuart, but like this seems to just be, I mean, I guess we know what his bucket list item is in this particular sense because he wants to do something with the flight attendant. But it'd be helpful to know what his list actually is, and what Ken Cho's additions to this list are, because that's a thing. But I think that like the fact that they are continuing to go and risk their lives to do things that seem very like unimportant, like get a flat screen TV. This is sort of like this continued theme. In this case, they just go and end up, it just seemed like to me, a very much like a throwaway episode.
it has
Um,
that's what I'm saying. It like adds nothing,
yeah.
and it just includes a lot of this strong undercurrent or just overcurrent of misogyny where it's really just about trying to get laid in the zombie apocalypse, which hey, there aren't a lot of storylines like that. You know why? Because it's actually like ridiculous. But so in their attempt to find a flat screen TV, they avoid a firefighter zombie who's shooting fire out of his fire hose instead of water, and a trucker who's eating a sandwich and has a zombie dog sitting next to him.
Hmm.
and driving a truck. Like, I don't know. It's like the absurdity sometimes is kind of off-putting. And then they end up in an underground mall and then encounter these four people, three ladies and a gentleman, and they turn out to be flight attendants. So, cue a lot of Akira's inner monologue, not really monologue, just inner losing his mind.
Yep.
Um, and Kensho, wins in quotes this like let's get laid competition, while Akira
Talk about
instead
Kensho's just getting naked thing all the time is really weird. I know it's probably a thing, but it's like all the time,
to every
uh,
episode,
every episode, and
even when he's dressed, his shirt is open. Like
it
there's
is,
no,
and
yeah,
like, and that's fine, I guess. I do think that the mechanism why they cover his like his genitals and his butt with like this these kind of like big firecracker emblems or something, which are really funny. But that's like it's every single episode with him. Um,
yeah. And honestly, sometimes the animation doesn't really work for like an anatomy.
no, it does not.
Like he looks like they're trying to just make him look like he is extremely muscular, but sometimes it works, but sometimes it's like, wait, no, he has like 400 abs, and maybe
Oh
that's
yeah,
part of
he
the
has a
joke.
lot of abs that can show.
Yeah.
For
But Akira, instead of being a smooth operator like Kensho, just chugs a bottle of tequila and ends up getting sick, and but then still manages to, I don't know, have a conversation with a woman before she is killed because one of the man is had a bite, and like I don't know, like there's nothing to this story, so I feel like you can just kind of skip to the end where everybody dies except for Kensho and Akira, and they get out with a TV, and like
Yep.
great, that's it, that's the story.
And by the way, all sorts of other supplies in there, and all they do is get the TV. So I'm really bothered by that.
Well, they're not,
I
yeah, they're
know.
definitely not even worried about food. They're on their roof the next episode. Why are they living on the roof? I don't know. It rains in Japan. Why, like they're playing video games on the roof with their new TV.
But the next episode in this thing is Hero of the Dead. And this is you know, it's sort of related to the last episode because he had a talk with a flight attendant about his dream because her dream was, I guess, to be a flight attendant, but his dream was to be like a superhero. And so he has this like whole big idea that, to thwart the zombies, he's gonna get this like one of those mesh shark suits that, people can't bite through.
Which is admittedly not a terrible idea.
It isn't, but it doesn't stop pressure. So
Yeah.
that's the one thing. And there's like a lot of absurdity and ridiculousness.
Yeah,
So
the monster in this, the shark with the dead bodies of divers inside it, were acting as its legs, and they act in concert.
yeah,
And it shoots fish out of its mouth at some point. It has red eye, like all of the basically, it's super dumb. The
it
point
is.
of this
It also
episode
felt,
is to once again like bounce him off of this female character whose name I forget, Shizuka,
yeah,
and then once again get rebuffed, but also introduces this concept of him being willing to risk Kensho's life to do, quote unquote heroic things,
right.
which is probably not a terrible, you know, uh, concept to introduce into the show. We'll see where it goes, but yeah, like they're being extreme. Both of them are being extremely flip with their life and survival, but that doesn't feel like there are any stakes for them. Like the show doesn't introduce
Right.
that. So
Well,
to
the one
have this
thing
one
that
character saying like, "How dare you," be so fast and loose with people's lives. It's like, well, lives clearly don't matter in this universe, or it doesn't feel like they do.
right. I mean, and I think that's where the sort of juxtaposition is a little awkward, which is that you do have this character, um, Shizuka saying, like, hey, this is like real and you shouldn't risk your life, or, you should be, thinking a little at a higher level. And So I do think it introduces that, but it doesn't really seem to stop the sort of absurdity and the ridiculousness. And the shark with the legs felt very Scooby-Doo to me, just how it's like chasing them all around. It's like,
They literally have flippers on their feet. So yeah.
right. But in the end, there's this whole thing where Akira saves her and she's kind of mad that he does and finally gives her contact information. But that's just like kind of it, and it's like a nothing episode.
Like, okay, they've driven forward his relationship with Shizuka, like, micrometer further.
Right.
And then they introduce her right at the beginning, basically, of the next episode anyway. So what was the point? Like, let's just, like, I feel like there's so much filler going on here.
Right.
Because then finally in RV of the Dead, we get reintroduced to what Kosugi, who was his boss, middle management boss at the exploitative
Well,
company, and
and
that
takes this
finally, like, that's the stakes of the whole story arc are back.
right, but it also takes absurdity to yet another level. There's a couple of nice moments in here, and just from the animation and there's this whole thing where Kensho and Akira are on the roof, and because there's no light pollution anymore. They see, the universe, and Akira remembers seeing the sky from his hometown, and they decide to go there. But before that, they're like looting and they're getting like gold watches and things like that. And then they have this whole idea that they're gonna go and get an RV to go to his hometown, and that's where, again, they run in to Shizuka, and she's very much like we have to pick something that's makes sense. They're like very much like just being flip about everything and like, oh no, we have to pick this crazy thing that's like the most fun. And ultimately they just get a normal RV, but
Well,
there's
because they've taken so long
right. And they're loud and they've
going back and
attracted
forth
some.
and screaming at each other that the zombies have all come. Like, so in a way, yes, the show is judging them for being annoying, but and they end up in just like a real run of the mill
Yeah.
Winnebago looking thing.
There's a moment where they have Shizuka um basically sort of falling into their game because she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful thing she's ever seen." Like just being like a little bit shallow about the things that she's going to pick, and then she snaps out of it. Um, but I feel like they try this sense of humor that is a little too it's just there's not enough stakes and you're not building the relationships enough between these characters. And you can do that in anime and you can do it really well, even in something like this that feels a little bit more Shaun of the Dead, like which obviously was live action, but like in Shaun of the Dead, there was a lot of comedy, but there was also relationships that you believed, right? So I don't know that they're doing the best job at doing this. Like the absurdity is a little too absurd almost. And then that sort of continues into this episode. Like they start out on a journey out, to go to Akira's hometown, and they're sort of seeing the wreck of Tokyo, and weirdly the street, like they do have this whole conversation or this whole thing about the fact that like there's these little like interludes where Akira and Shizuka are talking, and they're talking about what's happened, and it gets very serious. Like he's like, I can't believe the roads are clear, and she's like, oh, the virus hit so quickly, and he's like, a virus, and they go into like this whole thing about how this was probably a virus, and that maybe that somebody can find a cure, and like this whole thing about civilization, and it's like in a blink of an eye, and then we get into like the most absurd thing in this whole episode. um this is this is like their weird thing where they run into a spike strip that like kind of injures Kensho, who is on a motorcycle, and then see Akira's old boss, Kosugi, and he's like with this group of people, I guess former employees. Is that what we're supposed to guess, or these are people that he's done the same thing to?
I
Maybe.
think it's a combo, yeah, but like a lot of them are a baseball team called It looks like they're called the Kosugis, but that
I
can't
know.
be
I
right.
think they're the Kosugis, and like it's like really weird. And and it's this whole very, and again, this is like the drama and the tension for Akira, where like he had been finding his freedom, seeing what the world was really like, and this forces him to truly address and I guess stand up for himself or figure it out on his own, um, and stand up to the big bad boss. And there's like, you know, he basically devolves into an automaton really quickly, and just that passive person that he was, and that sort of like a very much like um under the thrall of Kosugi. And but it's all very strange. Like it's, this is again, this is like a bit of the sort of function of this particular of anime, but it's like the very dramatic interactions and over the top expressions and over the top yelling. And I don't know, it's just the stakes don't feel as high as they probably are meant to. And I know this is supposed to be humorous and things like that, but it just felt a little bit, it like felt so ridiculous. It was kind of hard to watch. I don't know how you felt about it.
I I didn't honestly when Kosugi shows up and Akira is forced back into his shell. I was kind of like, thank goodness, here we are finally with real stakes again.
Something, right?
So, like finally, like I don't want to see our protagonist, in this state, but it at least the whole first episode was kind of devoted to this abusive relationship and what the impact it had on him, and then we've had four episodes of just like
Nonsense.
ridiculousness and nonsense and no stakes. And so finally it feels like there are stakes again. And so I do feel that it was helpful to I just wish that this had been episode 3 instead of episode 6.
I guess I just the baseball uniforms and things like that just feel so silly to me, but I know it's part of the thing. So
Baseball uniforms in zombie movies have a really long history. You're
I
going all
know.
the way back to Pitcairn, whatever they were in Dawn of the Dead, and then the whole baseball team in Train to Busan, and I'm sure there are others that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have a problem with a baseball. I mean, these are not zombies either. These are enforcers, and for whatever reason, they're kind of scary. But also, then like the way that their relationship with Kosugi is also revealed in this episode, where he feels the need to kind of cater to them, where you don't see that with any of the other relationships he's had before. I thought that was kind of good too. Like I said, this episode worked for me on a level. I didn't feel it was super absurd, I guess. So it kind of worked for me. I think I don't like happy Akira. I think I prefer it when he's like beat up and sad. Although when he starts singing his stupid beer song again, I am kind of like, all right, cool, yeah, like let's see a little, like let's maybe balance this all out.
Yeah, and he was very excited about his beer, and that did show his um I guess his growth, if you want to talk about it, and his little joy with that and giving joy to like these other people. He kind of forces Kasigi to pretend to be the nice guy, and that they're doing this like whole welcome celebration or a welcome party. Um and um so that's kind of the end of this episode, is just that we know that there's going to be some kind of a comeuppance or some kind of a confrontation, but
Yeah,
he is like really
showing that he feels he has to cater to
yeah,
his enforcers
yeah,
means that Kosugi has a weakness,
yep.
and that'll probably be his undoing. But I hope if they kill off Kosugi in the next episode or two, I really hope we're not just stuck for the next 3 episodes after that with more absurdity and you know no stakes. I want stakes. Yes,
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be stupid fluff and big large big screen TVs and trying to get laid for the rest of the season. Just doesn't feel important enough.
Right. And so I think we'll round it out with, we'll see where we get to in the next the last 3 episodes. Um, and hopefully it continues on this trend and doesn't devolve back into what we just saw at the last for episodes 4 and 5. Um, so ooh, you know what? I think I found the bucket list.
You found the translation?
I did. And you know what? It's pretty good. But this is before he becomes a zombie. So that's remember, uh clean my room, loaf around and drink beer all day, ride a motorcycle, confess to the girl I loved, travel around the country, pig out at a nice sushi restaurant, see an aurora, I guess the aurora borealis, um, wine and dine a flight attendant, grow a cool beard.
He does try to, he does one with a marker in episode
Oh,
2.
that's right. Okay, so but that didn't that didn't really work out so well.
No.
Marathon some games on a widescreen TV. They did that.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff my face with all you can eat crabs. Airsoft, which I don't know what that is.
It's like realistic gun. It's like pellet guns.
Skydiving, get a solid gold watch. So I guess that was on his list. Kick back in a hot spring, ride in an RV, go stay at home camping, paint and oil painting, party at a show club, learn SLR photography. Okay. So there's like a lot. There's a lot here. And then there's definitely Kensho, and they have the note.
Kensho ones.
So I'm gonna send this to you. There we
Okay,
go.
great.
This is gonna
Thank you.
make the sense of the whole rest of the series.
I will also read that in my free time while you're reading Red Harvest.
Oh yeah, because that's gonna happen. I will read it. Just send me the link.
So thank you for listening to this podcast about zombies reanimated, where we talked this time about Zom 100 Bucket List of the Dead, episodes 4-6. Send us an email, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can go online and find all the rest of our episodes at reanimated.podbean.com.
Indeed. And so until next time, ciao.
Alrighty, bye-bye for now.